Yo, what's going on? Having a pretty good day today, and for whatever reason, the vaush video that I did a couple of days ago had a little bit of views today for some reason. I don't really know why. You would think you would have thought it would have happened a couple of days ago, if anything. But it was nice to see. Kind of the responses I expected. People kind of making, no or something, just whatever their reply was, but not something that they were actually looking to make any engagement with. It's not like they had an argument or a point or something they wanted to do. They just kind of, you could tell just people from the bandwagon. And then, there were a few people that were fans that were like, oh, thank you or whatever. But I definitely wanted to talk about, I'm trying to find it right now. 1 second. Because I have thought more about it since. And it's not that I really changed any opinions on it, but there was definitely a few things that I wanted to touch on about it. All right, let's see what we got. Well, I mean, first, I don't want to just be, 1 second. I don't want to just be defending vaush in these. I do think that he potentially ended his career with this, or at least did some very significant damage to it. And I do think that probably the worst part of that is going to be the, I don't like to, pussyfoot around on this, the bestiality stuff. Like, there's part of me that's like, maybe this was somewhat lighthearted or a joke or something, but I don't think that, I don't think that's an argument anyone's going to make for him or he can make, and I don't think that anyone's going to give any charitability or good faith to that. And I think there's people in his community that, and I saw one comment like this that was kind of trying to almost downplay it as the furry thing, and I think that it's a little bit more damaging, and I want to explain why. When I was graduating high school around then, it was 2004, so there was a presidential election that was going on. And the big thing that was being talked about by George W. Bush was the Defense of Marriage Act. There was a lot of debate going on about legalizing gay marriage and, just in general showing more acceptance towards the LGBTQ community going on. And there was a lot of pushback to that as well. And one of the kind of more disgusting arguments that was made was, well, it starts with this and then it's going to be people wanting to marry goats or sheep or, whatever. And I think that having somebody who is advocating for leftist politics and for acceptance of said communities with a now known history for bestiality and things like that, it's optically terrible. It's something that those same people who would love to continue to make those arguments can push for when they can start being, well, this was a huge person on the left that was making all of these sound arguments that you're making, and look at, like, I'm sure that next it was going to be how you argue that this is okay. How far are we going to fall on this? And I don't think it's, listen, I have no problem with criticizing somebody for bestiality. I think that that's pretty, I don't, there's like, well, it's drawn, there's no problem with the animal consenting. I don't think that it's the animal consenting that's the problem, that's definitely an aspect of it, but I kind of feel like for me, whenever I've ever come in contact with this subject matter, that was not the problem with it that I thought of. I've now thought of it, I'm like, yeah, that's a valid point, as well as just the you factor. of it, really. I don't, again, it's like kink shame. Da, da, da. Yes, I guess it's kind of one of those, like, vaush has an argument of, like, I like good things because they're good and bad things because they're, or I think bad things are bad because they're bad. Well, this one I just think is bad. I don't even know if I want to come up with a logical or rational excuse for it. I feel like I should just be able to go, like, yeah, man, I think that's, like, too far. Now, I think much like the, questionable lolly stuff that I saw in there, I don't think I don't think that the horse so much is the focus. I think that, again, it's just big dicks that the dude kind of gets off on. To that point, one of the horse pictures was just of the cock. That scene, I don't think any of the horse was in the picture. But I feel like you can only fucking fall on that, back on that so many times. You know what I mean? Jesus. Anyways, and yeah, I think optically it's pretty bad, not just for him, but for LGBTQ rights and activism. For him just honestly to kind of even be a voice for it right now, like distancing themselves from him would be the best thing optically. Now, having said that, I have tried to watch more of the H3H3 coverage because I do, when it comes to things like this, especially somebody that I have been a fan of, I really do try to get the most diverse opinions that I can get, in the most negative and prosecute, like the worst, honestly, the most bad faith ones, which are the H3H3 ones, and then try to see what's in between. It does seem like with the last one that I watched, it was when they were going over the context video, and I think especially after the clip of vaush where he's talking about, well, if you do feel this way or have these urges, you should go seek help. That society at large shouldn't demonize people like this, because by doing so, you kind of push them away from going and getting the help that they need. And the real harm there is that means they end up in more insular communities that promote it. So instead of getting help, you're actually kind of pushing them towards people that are gonna enable, if I mean at the least. And I think as it was like kind of the only clip, or the first clip that I saw that Ethan kind of shut the fuck up and actually listened to, and you could kind of see, like, it felt like the wheels kind of turning in his head. I can't remember what he tried dismissing it with, but it seemed half-hearted. Like he was like, you could see he was it was starting to kind of click maybe a little bit, like maybe this guy really doesn't actually think these things and really was making arguments against them this whole time, because that whole spiel seems very much from the heart, much more than any of the things that he says he was joking about. Those seem like he may have been joking, and this seems pretty earnest and well thought out and a good argument, and a pretty mature viewpoint to have on the subject matter. And I kind of noticed that after that, it did seem like some of the flame was just kind of taken out of it. It seemed like before that he seemed very angry. I know that he's got Tourette's, I believe, and you could definitely see him getting worked up to the point that was starting to get triggered before that. And it almost seemed like that kind of just, it was like watching somebody go through cognitive dissonance and like start to come to acceptance with that afterwards. Now, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. This is just me watching it baked in my room. I've watched plenty of other content creators on it now, and it does kind of seem like the people that are more in a political sphere, so have had more interactions with Vaush and who he is, are a little bit more charitable, even if they don't like him. Because I think that, just if you've known about him or heard enough about him, because even if it's just because he's in spaces that you're in, many of these allegations and the subsequent context in rebuttals have been around for a while. I mean, in all reality, this was somebody who made a bunch of edge jokes, but really kind of made their name by arguing and debating against people who were making pro-pedo joke or pro-pedo arguments. Again, it's why he has a lot of arguments against this sort of thing, and I feel like he did talk about a lot of it. So much of the time was that's who he was dating or who he was debating against. You go back to 2016, and you got Milo Yiannopoulos going on the Bill Maher show and saying that he had a relationship like that and it was positive. And there are other people that make that argument. And then you have Nick Fuentes, who is another pretty prominent figure amongst, especially young, white male peoples that are starting to get into politics and starting to, figure out the world in this way. And both of them make the arguments that people accuse Vaush of making. And Vaush made his career debating a lot of their fans. And showing just how stupid their arguments were, just really how dumb they were, which I think also helped give a lot of his audience the ammunition they needed when they were online and started dealing with these people trolling their communities, to be able to go, I'm just going to shut down your argument, rather than, here, block you. Fine, I'll engage with you the way that you want, but I'm going to show you how dumb what you're saying is and why. I'm going to be able to point it out. And so I think for anyone with an understanding of that, there is a little bit more charitability when it comes to these things. And also, this is kind of the point I wanted to make in criticizing Ethan Klein a little bit. When you release all of this backlog of stuff without really vetting it properly to make sure that all of it is accurate information, and you're not just releasing a bunch of out of context clips that somebody else is going to be able to go, you know how they made it look like I said this? Well, here's 30 seconds further of that. When enough of that happens, it gets very hard for anyone with any experience with the subject or the situation to not start to just dismiss any allegations. I think that is something that Vaush fans need to be, particularly vigilant of in themselves. And why, again, I try to get a plethora of different viewpoints on this. Obviously, I tried to pick up on if the source of it was doing so in good faith or had an axe to grind, or, if it was somebody that was a little bit more knowledgeable and seemed to be at least in good faith criticizing Vaush. But if you don't do that, you could let something slip through because you hit a situation where you've dismissed the bad argument so many times that you stop listening to any new ones, and that can give people cover to do some pretty despicable things. That's not what I think is happening here, but and also to Ethan Klein, that would be the criticism. If he's really a pedophile, then there is proof of that. There is undeniable proof of that. Not, well, we say these pictures are too sussy, or whatever else. Like, you wouldn't be passing those pictures around at that point. Like, the FBI would be showing up at his house and taking his hard drive at that point. Like, you know, these are like the things where you're like, okay, this level. And I do feel watching their representation of it, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're watching something where if you didn't know any of the context, or you didn't know any of the situation, you would have thought that, like, Vaush Flashy's porn folder and the cops came and got him the next day, that it was that open and shut a case. And then, you know, showing all those out of context clips every single time, that is just crying wolf, crying wolf, and crying wolf. And, you know, God forbid something more serious and more substantial comes out in the future. That's going to be one less voice with credibility, and in a very large voice. So I think that, you know, that's a level of responsibility, right, in doing what Ethan does, and having such a large platform, is making sure that the stuff that he says is credible, so that his credibility is sound and sure, and so that, you know, people that follow him aren't having their credibility tested by going out and doing things, or repeating the things that he's saying. But there is definitely a big part of this that is just bad faith. Again, I was watching them go over the context video. I think I might name this one, put context in the title or something like that, really try to farm that clout off of the situation. Maybe I can get like 200 views on this next one. But what was I saying? But alright, so I'm gonna have to try to edit this in there. I did want to touch the last little bit of this on being kind of the bad faith. I think the biggest part of where it's hard, if you are a fan of Vaush and seen enough of these accusations come against him that were not warranted and turned out to be made by 4chan in order to try to make him look like a hypocrite for a lot of his anti-CP and pedo arguments that he made against, you know, people that were fanboys of. When you hear people like Ethan Klein and Dan start to make these things and they're all of the same arguments, it's like, all right, well then, why would I believe this now? You know what I mean? Like, I've already heard you say all of these things. It's very clear that you just have an axe to grind here. You just don't like the guy. I think with Dan, I heard right from the beginning, it was like, oh, I've been waiting for this. And it's like, okay, well, why? Because you show the clips that were out there that you could have based this opinion on, and it's like, so the only way you could base that opinion is by taking them out of context. So before this, you had already decided that you really didn't like this guy because of a bunch of out of context clips. Then this happens, and you seem to go overboard in really destroying him. And it's like, all right, well then, you know, that doesn't seem like it's an unbiased opinion. That seems like it's a very biased opinion that's going on. And, you know, when I was watching them go over the context video, it was something, he was like, maybe if he had made this video months ago, you know, before all of this, you know, maybe then. And I was like, well, he did. Like, he made videos about the context and apologizing for some of his bad jokes multiple times over the last 4 years since I've been watching him. I think I started watching him in 2020, which was a good, like 4 years ago. But that, again, that's 4 years. And that was after all of these clips. I think the very few clips that would have come from 2020 that I did see in stream, are the honestly like the most defendable ones. They're the ones that you're like, all right, well, it still is bad that like he's maybe like using this as an argument, but like it's pretty clear that what he's saying is not pro CP or anything. So it's like, well, you know, what you're saying he should have done is what he did, you know. And I think it's the other area where it tends to bode in Vaush's favor is that when people are lying about things, there's constantly a changing of story and a changing the narrative and, you know, whatever else. But with him, there's unbelievable consistency. Even when it comes to the excuse of, well, I didn't know, and the thing that I was really interested in there was the gigantic dick in the picture. It's like, well, he's been saying that for years. He's been saying that he's into big dicks for years. And again, when you look at the pictures, it's almost like if you had a friend and you saw their porn collection and all of them, every picture was the same actress, let's say, and one or two of them were her as a cheerleader or like a Catholic schoolgirl or something, and you were like, dude, you are such a pedo, look at that, like you have, you know. And it's like, yeah, those are problematic pictures, those are fetishizing youth, like that's still not good, even if it's an adult doing it, but you'd be like, well, clearly the reason he has that is because he's got a whole nother thing going on. You know, it's not like he sought out those pictures for that fantasy as much as something else that was part of it. In this case, the actress in my example in reality is a huge throbbing member. You know, which is probably why a lot of people have a hard time, like myself, being like, I mean, was it? I don't know, because it's like, it doesn't, again, just going by basic art, photo, whatever, composition, and telling a story with an image, you know, if you looked at it, I feel like you're like, somebody's like, there's lolly in there? And you're like, really? Where? You know, it's like, underneath that throbbing vein, and you're like, oh yeah, you know, yeah, actually that is kind of problematic, but you know, also understandable why, if that's not, you know, the focus of what your desires are, not what you noticed. The irony of saving a porn picture not because it has lolly, but despite it, right? You're just like, oh God, that is beautiful. I'm gonna have to Photoshop these young looking chicks out of this picture, but I have got to save that. Like, but you know, if ever that situation seems plausible, it would be with Vaush. But all in all, it is a funny situation, and it is entertaining to think about, because there was one point where H3 was watching it, and they were talking about how, like, oh, if you save an image, you have to really like it. And I just remember thinking, like, you save the image if you really like it? Like, who does even that? No one does this. No one's, or do they? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know why you would. There's internet everywhere. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. What could you possibly need to save onto your phone that you couldn't just find on the internet? Especially if you saved it from the internet. I don't know. Yeah, it's just, so it's like, what a weird thing. But I am kind of tired, and I do have a lot more work to do tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'm going to go skateboarding, and I kind of need to now edit these two videos together, because I completely forgot the point that I was making before this last half. For anyone that does stick around for the entirety of this rambling, kudos to you, and also I'm sorry. You need to find something better to do. I'm not sure how long this will be, but if it's like a 30 or 40-minute video, like you should have read a book or something in this time. But I do appreciate you stopping by, and you know, if you want to like and subscribe, that'd be great. No, but yeah, it was nice talking to whoever's listening, and see you again tomorrow. Peace.